Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a space where we can be, belong, and become the very best version of ourselves. So, wherever you're joining us, again, whether you're driving into work, sitting down at on your couch, having breakfast with a family, wherever you are, we just want to say welcome. We hope you enjoy what we do here today. And as always, look down at the screen there. Down at the bottom, you can always consider, again, hitting the subscribe button, sharing this with friends. If you find what we do interesting and you want to be a part of it, even more, be a partner in what we're doing, there's always ways to donate, tax-deductible donations. Always super helpful. But wherever you are, whether you're partnering with us or not, we just want to say welcome. We're so glad you're here. And so at Ethos, again, what we do, which again I think is so interesting, is we go and we delve deep into what the Bible says. We look at the history, right? We look at the context. We look at the original language, right? We look at the audience, who it was intended for. Because again, this compilation was not written for us thousands of years later. This was written to a specific group of people for a very specific reason. And so when we do the difficult work, because it is difficult work. It takes time and energy to do the research, to really delve into all the bigger meanings, to look at all the different interpretations, what the rabbis say, which rabbis agree, disagree. It takes a lot of work. And so we do the difficult work. And then what we do with it, we then learn to apply it. But only after you've done the difficult work can you really responsibly apply it. And so that's what we've been doing through the book of Genesis. And so the book of Genesis, again, the book of origins. Many people will confuse this book. They'll think, oh, it's a history book, right? Because that's kind of how we read books today. But that's not the original intention. It was not to say this is literally how Israel came to be. The book of origin really was told because they essentially were dealing with assimilation, right? And we've talked about this over and over again, but it's so important to get this right, right? This was a group of people, a very small tribe, right? A nomadic, small tribe of people called Israelites. And they, like many other tribes, every time a large empire came in, they would take hold of these small tribes and they'd kind of devour them, right? And so when they would do that, they would basically make their empire bigger and bigger because they would take all of these captives, right? And they would indoctrinate them into all that is Babylonian, all that is Egyptian, all that is Roman. And so when you essentially assimilated, you took on their gods, their values, their stories, their traditions. And so Israel in 587 BC, they go to Babylon, right? The city of Babylon. And there in Babylon, they're faced with the question all the other tribes are facing. Do we assimilate or not? And Israel is one of the very few tribes that said, you know what? We're not going to assimilate, right? We're not going to take on the stories. We're going to hold on to our own, right? We're going to hold on to our own values. And so how do you hold on to your values, your traditions as an ancient people? Well, for them during that time era, you tell stories, right? You sit around the campfire and you tell the stories, right? The big fish tales, right? You tell the stories that help essentially tell you who we are, where we're going, the cycles, the mistakes we've had in the past. You create beautiful stories, right? And oftentimes you pull from some very real experiences, right? But often they get bigger and bigger. And so this is what happens. And so Torah, right? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Torah is basically a compilation of poetry, songs, epic mythology stories, poetic musings, prophetic warnings telling the people, hey, if we do this again, this is what happens, right? Prophets and kings. We have all these different stories, all these different prophetic warnings, all to say, Israel, let's not assimilate. Israel, let's hold close our Jewish values. That was the bigger picture here, our Israelite perspective, our values, our one God, right? So let's hold on to those things. And so Torah, those 5 books of the Old Testament, that was every time you read that, it is Israel miniaturized, right? Every telling, every story is there to remind Israel, this is who we are and this is who we aren't. And so when you read about Jonah, when you read about Adam, right? Adama, dirt. When you read about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, all these different individuals. Keep in mind, when Israelites read them, they see their nation in these people, and they see the cycles of their nation through these people, right? Captivity, crying out. There's a moment of exodus, and then they wander for a bit. They learn, unlearn, and then they experience freedom, only to go back through it with the next messianic character. We'll see it over and over again. And so again, Genesis, this is where we are. We are going to finish up chapter 9 today. And there's going to be a good amount of reading. And so we're going to kind of get through it. But in the middle of this, there's a really cool concept I wanted to share with you. And it's really revolving around three main names. But we'll get there. I won't jump ahead. Remember Noah, because that's the individual we're still talking about in chapter 9. Noah, again, is this individual who means, his name literally means like resting. It's the breath, it's the calm, right? Any of you have ever been in a conflict with someone, or you got into an accident, right? Your car hit another car, and before you step out of that car, you say, "Oh, I got to get grounded," and you take a breath and you go do the hard thing. The name Noah, I always want to say Jonah. The name Noah means taking a breath before you do the hard thing. That's what the name means in action in the Hebrew. And so Noah is this individual who you stop, you take the breath before you step into the new thing, right? The difficult, painful thing. So here we go. Genesis 9:17 through 29. I'll read it first, and then we'll just go through verse by verse, and we'll look at some interesting concepts here. And then we'll look at a really cool application we can use from this text. So Genesis 9:17 through 29, it starts like this. And the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham, he was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the entire earth spread out. And Noah began to be master of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and became drunk, and he uncovered himself within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness, and he told his two brothers outside. And Shem and Japheth took the garment, and they placed it on both of his shoulders, and they walked backwards, and they covered their father's nakedness, and their faces were turned backwards, so that they did not see their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and he knew what his small son had done to him. And he said, "Cursed be Canaan, he shall be a slave among slaves to his brethren." And he said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be a slave to them. May God expand Japheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be a slave to them." And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Right? That was a mouthful. But let's move through it slowly. Right? So that first part here, Genesis 9:17. And the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now understand this. There were more sons that would have been mentioned here. There were more individuals that are going to be brought up, but you'll notice these three are the main ones that are going to be discussed. And so even as they begin repopulating the earth and different genealogies begin to move through in chapter 10, you'll find that these three are the main ones mentioned. Again, if we were writing history, we'd make sure to mention everybody, right? Every name, every person, all the genealogy, the tree would be wide, it would be expansive. But that's not the point of this telling. Because Shem, Ham, and Japheth, these names mean something. They have importance, especially if you're an Israelite. If you're an Israelite, when you hear these three names, you have connections immediately. Not only does the Hebrew mean something, these names, but there's also a lot of history and a lot of texture to the names. And so it's important. Right here, watch the slide for a moment. Shem, understand this. Shem is the eldest son, the one that carries the past with them. So when you hear the name Shem, again, eldest son, very important in Hebrew culture, right? This is the one that often would get the blessings. But the concept here in the Hebrew, which I find really interesting, is the idea that Shem, wherever Shem goes, he carries on his shoulders the stories, the rituals. He carries Israel's past on his shoulders so that others might see it and learn from it. That's Shem. And so again, Israel reads this, right? As an Israelite, you read this, and a Shem in your culture is very important, isn't it? Yeah. If we didn't have historians today, think about history, like the importance of history. Not only is history important so we don't make the same mistakes, right? There are many quotes about this. If we don't learn from our history, we are destined to repeat it, right? But even more so, if we learn from history, then we can actually expand on what we know, right? We can invent new things. We can take what was there and we can move forward with it. Shem is the individual who enables Israel, right? He brings this on his shoulders so that Israel might potentially grab a hold, right, of that and move forward with it. And then this is where Japheth comes in, right? Shem is the one that carries the weight, the history of Israel on his shoulders. Japheth, watch this now. He's the one that's going to build on the blessings. So that's the idea of Japheth. He is like the picture of the command, be fruitful and multiply, right? He's the one that says, thank you, Shem, for carrying this on your shoulders. He learns from the past. He understands what worked and what didn't work, right? He's able to tweak certain things that did and didn't work. He takes those things and he expands on them. He grows them, right? Learns from the past, continues it on. But he doesn't just continue doing the same thing. He expands and grows it. And that's where blessings come in. Beautiful, right? These two names, so much in these names. And so if Israel is simply just Shem, they're just following the footsteps of Shem. The warning here is that if you simply just carry it on your shoulders, you may find yourself repeating them. But if you also have Japheth, who's going to take those and move them and bring them to a place of blessing, expand on them, you can literally stop doing vicious cycles, repeat the good ones, and add on new, right? It's a beautiful concept. But there's always the dark element, right? Ham oftentimes means like the dark element, the one that we don't always think about, the one that sometimes we follow, right? Because Ham is the cursed one. And again, I know in the past people have said, "Oh, these are African Americans." No. That's not the point. One could potentially make an argument that like, they're trying to show where like Ethiopians came from here and this group came from here, but that was not the point at all, right? The point here, Israel is hearing their story, right? And so Ham is the cursed one. Wherever he goes, the sun burns down hard on Ham. Everywhere he goes, he works, he toils, right? He finds meaning from only his work. Is this sounding familiar? Yeah, he takes on the curse of Adam. You see how it all kind of goes back? It's cyclical, right? Ham is the picture of the curse that Adam takes on, right? Ham is the one that's going to labor, painful labor, only get he is what he does. He is a slave. And so Israel has found themselves many times when they've been in captivity, they've been called slaves, right? When Israel forgets their story, when Israel repeats certain cycles over and over again, they follow in the path of Ham. So again, you can see the three concepts here really beautifully told all through just three names. Names are so important in the Hebrew. And for Israelite people reading this, and even Jewish scholars today, it's an immediate connection. They make it now. For us today who don't have the Jewish connections, we don't understand the names, we don't understand the history, we sometimes will try to make this historically accurate. We'll miss the entire picture altogether. But it's really a beautiful warning to us, right? If you go this direction, you take on that curse, right? You become a slave to the things those cycles of brokenness. You become a slave to those things. If you only carry history on your back, if you only carry the past, you may potentially repeat the cycles. But if you are the Shem, then you are learning and growing from history, right? You're not repeating vicious cycles, but you're taking on new, more beautiful, shalom-centered ones, right? It's a great picture. And so, again, the three symbolize very different paths, and this is where we see, again, Beautiful, beautiful pictures. One would be more wisdom, the other is more the past. And the last one is let's just erase it and do our own thing, right? Let's just screw it all up. That's the Ham way. Three different paths, three different pictures. So let's keep going. Watch this. Even before that, actually, and I didn't make the connection, but these three were the sons of Noah. And notice even before that, Ham is the father of Canaan, right? Was he literally the father of Canaan? Is that where Canaan got its roots from? Well, probably not. Right? If you take this very literally, you could maybe say that. But the reality is, this is Israel saying, "Where do you think our enemies came from?" Right? Where did they came from? Well, we think they came from a curse, right? Canaanite stories would not say that, right? They would have a very different way of describing their story. But this is how Israel speaks about their enemies. Yeah, the Philistines were cursed. They were bad people. The Philistines probably had very different stories, didn't they? But this is how Israel chooses to point out this is who our enemies are. This is where they were cursed. This is why they're bad people. You get the point here, right? So I'll go on to the blue. Noah began to be master of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. Now, again, understand this. Noah begins where Adam left off. And that's a really important picture here. Noah, he toils with the soil, right? He struggles, he works to build the new future for the family. He is the new Adam, right? He's the one that's going to toil. He's going to work. There's going to be struggles to gain the blessings, but that's what Noah will do. And he's going to be fruitful, and there's going to be multiplication. You know, the nations will grow from the work that he does. Yeah, it's really cool. And when you think about this, Israel's challenge to themselves here in the story is we should be planting. Right? We should be working hard for the future generations. What I see oftentimes in our culture today is we just want to take, right? But we don't always think about the future generations, what effect our choices have now on the future. And so if we have this mindset like Israel did, I think then we begin to be proactive. We find ways to restore, we bring peace, we bring shalom. If it's all about consume, then there will be nothing for the future generations. And so Noah here is thinking of the future. He's thinking of the future generations. He wants to prepare a place for them. Yeah? Good. All right, here we go. Noah, next it says, Noah, he became drunk on wine and he uncovered himself within his tent. Now, if you grew up in a tribe that said drinking's evil, drinking's bad, then this became the sole point, the purpose of this story, right? Don't get drunk or you're going to end up naked on the floor of a tent, right? You're going to be passed out worshiping the porcelain gods. But that is not actually the point. If you understand Judaism, you know this idea that alcohol was evil and bad is just simply not true. That's not how they viewed it, right? Within moderation always, right? Drunkenness was almost always something that was looked down on, whereas celebration, having a couple glasses here and there, that was considered a blessing. And this is just how Jewish people view it. Ask any Jew today about alcohol. You won't find too many saying it's evil, it's bad. The idea here is not that Jonah got wasted, right? Here's what one scholar says about this. The meaning behind this odd moment in Torah is that Noah is in a compromised state, right? He is found weak in the sight of his children. The question, of course, for Israel is, what do we do when our fathers, mothers, brothers are found in need? Do we help? Or do we take advantage? That is a much heavier understanding than simply don't drink alcohol, don't be a drunk. There's something way, way deeper here. Yeah, and when you get it, again, the two children, Japheth and Shem, notice what they do. They choose to cover dad, right? They choose to cover dad's nakedness. Because again, nakedness in that culture, when you saw the patriarch of your culture, your society, your tribe naked, that was a sign of weakness. That was a sign of less power. And so when the patriarch, when the head of the family is uncovered, the idea here is, will you take advantage of that moment? Will you mock them? Will you use it to push them down so that you might be elevated? Or will you cover them? What do you do when someone is in a compromised situation? Do you take advantage, or do you lovingly help them? What do you do? What do you do, Israel, right? And so Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness, and he told his two brothers outside. So again, notice this. He could have covered him. He could have done the good thing. He could have covered dad so that his nakedness was not shown. But what he does here is he chooses to go tell other people. And in the Hebrew, you understand this is a sign of essentially taking advantage of someone. In fact, in some interpretations, they'll say he actually rapes his father in this moment, right? I don't know that I go that far to say that's the right interpretation or not, but the idea here is that the son Ham, he takes advantage of dad. Whether it's physical or it's more of a mocking kind of tone, leaving him naked so that other people might see him. Either way, he leaves dad in a compromised state, the head of the family, right? Bringing dishonor rather than honor on the past, on the people who, again, have built legacies, right? He's essentially dishonoring his father. And so he's taking advantage of the powerless. But notice this. His brothers, they placed, Shem and Japheth, they placed on both of their shoulders, they walked backwards. So notice this, they even walk backwards as a sign of respect, and they cover their father's nakedness. So they weren't even, they go in, they don't even look at dad, right? Because that's a sign of disrespect. And they find a way to cover him. Their faces were turned backwards, so they did not see their father's nakedness. It's all about showing respect and love when someone is in a compromised state. That was the deeper picture. And so Noah, it says, he awoke from his wine, right? And he knew what notice this, his small son. His son has already now been demoted, right? And the writers want you to know this. Anyone that willingly takes advantage of another person, anyone that takes their power and hoards it over others, putting others in a compromised state, has now become the lesser of the three. That's heavy for a nation of people. Anytime you hoard power over others, anytime you dominate and you hurt the people who are compromised, anytime you do that, you lose your power, right? You lose respect. You lose. And so he says, "Cursed be Canaan. He shall be a slave among slaves to his brethren." And so again, how do you describe your enemies? Well, this is where they came from. They essentially were cursed because they took advantage of the weaker brother, right? They took advantage of those who are compromised. That's why they are slaves, right? And this is what we see. Israel, when choosing to act like a beastly empire throughout their history, enslaving others. And we've seen this. Their history it does have those moments. King Solomon built the entire temple on the backs of slaves. But what happens to his empire when he takes advantage? He becomes essentially an arms dealer, right? He's dealing arms with Egypt. This is happening. When he does this, Israel, at the height of its glory, begins to fall. Israel begins to be weaker and weaker as the future generations, because those are the seeds he chose to plant. He took advantage of the compromised, the weak, the broken. And so as a nation today, we are beginning to finally have some of these conversations, aren't we? And maybe we've had some in the past, but I'm beginning to see a lot of movements where people are beginning to speak out against those who misuse their power. We've seen it with the police force. We've seen it with some of the judicial system. We've seen it with Me Too movements. And I don't know if you've noticed these, but again, Hollywood has been ripe with so many women and some men being taken advantage of. There have been sexual exploitations. There have been all these different moments where individuals have been abused. They've been taken advantage of, right? They've been exploited. And what we've seen lately is that there's this movement of people who are beginning to speak out. They said, you know what? This abuse of power has to stop now. And so brave people, from Buffy the Vampire Slayer to Gwyneth Paltrow to Taryn Burke, they're stepping forward and they're saying enough is enough. If enough of us use our voices, if enough of us stand up against this misuse of power, there will be change. Because that's what we do when we see someone, again, when we walk in the tent, we see the brokenness. We see someone in the compromised state. We have a choice. We can use that to our advantage, or we can help. We can help the individual in the compromised state. We can help those who are lesser than us, whether that's economics, politics, whatever it is. We choose to help. We choose to walk beside, right? And so Israel, their warning here is, look, when this happens, we're going to choose the way of Shem and Japheth, not Ham. And again, what a beautiful point to consider. Israel, whenever we've chosen the way of Ham, we end up being the oppressor. And at some point, our nation crumbles. Now, there is more in this chapter. I'm going to read a little more to you. And he said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be a slave to them. May God expand Japheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be a slave to them." So notice this. Those that work to cover and protect those who are hurting, those that help the widow, the orphan, the stranger within their gates, right? Those who choose to bring love, justice, those are the people who experience blessings everywhere they go. Because again, they are planting seeds, right? They're not just digging up the soil. They're actually planting seeds. And soon, everywhere they go, there is beauty, there's fruit, right? There's a harvest that will follow. But if you're spending all your time like Ham and you're just digging up all the fruits, you will never have anything in the wake of wherever you walk. But the idea here is Shem and Japheth, they plant. And everywhere they go, the blessings will follow. The blessings will follow Israel if you choose to be a planter, if you choose to be the one that respects and honors those who are weaker than you. Yeah, so good, right? And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Now, again, you could potentially try to take that very literally, right? He actually lived to be 950 years. Or you could understand how Israelites, how Jewish people, when they write about individuals who have gained blessings, who have done the planting, right? They always have these large numbers associated with the days of their lives. And again, the days of their lives was less literal and more about the blessings that follow when you choose to plant in good soil, when you choose to bring blessing in abundance, right? When you choose to be the person who continues to help, continues to everywhere they go bring shalom, tikkun olam, right? Nothing missing, nothing broken, healing the world. When that's what follows in your footsteps, your days are long, right? And they're filled with goodness and blessing. That is the deeper idea behind these long, years. It's not literally that man used to be, living this long, and now they don't live very long at all. History has taught us, right? We know evolutionary processes in science. We know from historically looking at archaeology. We know that the lifespans, it kind of goes up and down, right? Sometimes people lived to be 90. Other times we had people, the lifespan was 40. Right? It just kind of depends on where society is, how they viewed health, all of that, right? But so knowing this number is more symbolic and really revolving around when you choose the Shem and the Japheth path, your days are long and they're filled with abundance. It's much like Deuteronomy says, Deuteronomy 5:33. You shall walk in all the way which the Lord your God has commanded you, that you may live and that it may be well with you, that you may prolong your days in the land which you possess. Again, the idea here, when you step out of captivity, when you begin planting seeds, when you do the Noah way of expanding, growing after the chaos, after the brokenness, your days are prolonged. That's the concept here. And so all of that, I know this is a little bit longer, but how do you bring this home, right? What's the application now? There's a couple different ways we can move, but the one I want to do is I thought about this today. How do we help? Right? How do we become those people like Shem and Japheth? When we find someone in brokenness, when we go into the tent and we see the compromised person, right? We see the person in need of help. How do we help? Right? I know that there's so many different people and organizations out there that, oh, donate to us, donate this. There's so many ways you can help. But on a local level, I think there's things that we can do that can become a habit. And so, number one, I think make it a habit, right? Make it a habit to respect people, respect all people. And I think this is fascinating that we don't always think about. This includes while I'm driving, while I'm walking, interacting with people in line at Costco, right? Small ripples of respect can make a big difference in just your local community. Simply smiling at people, waving at someone, asking someone how their day is, even though you don't see it, it starts ripples in people all throughout the day. And it just started with you simply showing respect and honor to people. Especially people who are in some of the autumn of their days, right? The fall of their days, right? They're getting older, and I think a lot of older people, they begin to tend to feel a bit invisible. And so when we go out of our way to say, "How are you, sir? How are you, ma'am? It's so good to see you." Those kind of comments, they really do start ripples, and something that simple, getting into the habit of showing that kind of respect to people of all ages, it causes us to create ripples and also does something deep inside, I would argue, in our souls. Number two, dedicate a complete day to help out a friend in his or her aspirations and goals. I like this idea. Dedicating one day a month, maybe, or maybe one day annually, whatever it is. Taking a day where you say, I have these talents, I have these dreams, I want to help you reach them. And you just sit with someone. Or maybe you have a friend that single parent, right? And you know that they've just had a difficult time getting certain things done. And you say, "Hey, I'll take the kids to the park today. Go do your thing. Get this thing done. I know it means so much to you." When we take time out of our day to try to help people complete something that's important to them, it not only opens them, but it opens us up, right? It causes us to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. Number three, make it a habit to perform random acts of kindness. I love this one. Finding different ways to do really good things. It could be as simple as like taking out the neighbor's trash bin, right? Shoveling a neighbor's sidewalk. I did this the other day for my neighbor. I saw again, he's a little bit older, and I thought I'm just gonna shovel his driveway because again we got tons of snow. And so I did something very simple, and it meant the world to him. He came out and gave me a big hug. Something so simple goes a long way. It changes the course of someone's day. Picking up trash in the neighborhood, paying for the person behind you, in line at Starbucks. Something so simple. Hundreds of these little ideas periodically, just doing them will get you into the habit of thinking of others. Yeah. And then another one, be the person who welcomes new neighbors to the community. I cannot tell you, as someone who was a pastor for a very long time, I went to so many different churches, so many different communities. And for our family, it meant the world when someone showed up and just said, "Welcome to the neighborhood." Hey, here's some dinner, right? Whatever it was, you show up, you let them know you're welcomed here, right? We're happy you're here. Say hello to people. Welcome new people to the community. It's such a beautiful thing, especially when you're the new person. It means the world to them. And then lastly, volunteer. Consider volunteering once a month. Again, if you pick only one thing from this list, this would be the thing. Volunteer somewhere. Try to do it once a month. This could be like different causes in your community, wherever it is. Volunteermatch.org, allforgood.org, dosomething.org. So many different causes in your own neighborhoods. So many different groups of people, and you don't have to do it on your own, right? There are people already doing this stuff. When you choose to volunteer and work with organizations, first off, you're going to meet a lot of new people. You're going to make a lot of new friends. Secondly, you're going to participate with a group that's kind of figured it out. And when you do this, you become part of a larger machine that's going to make and do some incredible things in your neighborhood. Volunteering once a month. I know friends who are donating their time helping homeless people every week. I know people who are going out. They're going to different housing shelters. They're going to all these different places, and they're doing really really good things. And they've just dedicated once a month, sometimes once a week. But taking that time to volunteer is so important, especially to get us getting used to being the kind of Shem and Japheth people. Everyone, I hope this was helpful for you. I again just find it so interesting. Three names, so much context, so much texture, so much beauty you can pull from this ancient piece, the Bible, specifically the book of Genesis. If you enjoyed this, we want to ask you to please consider going to ethos-church.org/donate. Give there. We again are a tax deductible organization, and so donate there, tax deductible, especially around tax time. Fantastic to do. We would love for you to partner with us. Also, we do this thing twice a month. Ethos living rooms. We come together. We have discussion groups online. It is so much fun. And so if you're interested in that, email me, tonywerfel@gmail.com. I'll send you the Zoom link. And as always, hit that subscribe button, share that YouTube video. We'd love in this new year to grow our channel. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We love you, and we'll see you next week as we talk about Genesis 10 and Genesis 11. Take care. We'll see you.